and launch into this. So welcome everybody to this very special webinar entitled The 5 Wellness Tips for Living, Learning and Working from Home. My name is Jess and I'm from Family Zone, and tonight I'm so very lucky to be joined by the cyber expert Martine from the Modern Parent. Hi Martine.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I feel so lucky to have you with us. But before I hand over to Martine, before we get started, I'm just going to go through the housekeeping and the agenda. So I'll share my screen again and head into the agenda. So hopefully you're in the right place. The 5 Wellness Tips to Living, Learning and Working from Home Parent webinar. The agenda tonight. So first I'm just going to go through these quick introductions and housekeepings. And then Martine will take over from me and go through her 5 wellness tips for living, learning and working from home. And rumor here, I hear, Martine, you're going to give us a bonus tip. Yay, bonus tip. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then Martine will hand over to me and I'll go through a little bit on how Family Zone can assist as well. And then we'll take your questions at the end. So just to familiarise yourself with the Zoom platform before I hand over to Martine, I will stop sharing. So for those of you that are really new to webinars, you should be able to see and hear Martine and myself. And when we're presenting our screens, you should be able to see our screens, but you won't be able to see anybody else. You won't be able to see anyone else in the audience, and they can't see you either. All right, so feel free to be kicking back in your jammies with your glass of wine. Nobody can see you. Nobody can judge those old Ugg boots. I'm talking about myself here with my Ugg boots under the desk. Now we are recording this session, so also don't feel like you need to madly take notes or memorize what we're saying. It is being recorded and we'll make it available for you after the session. And just to familiarize yourself with the Zoom screen, you can see there's a whole range of buttons on the bottom of your screen, and one of them says Q&A. So that is where you can type your questions for either myself about Family Zone or to Martine about her tips tonight. You can also ask them anonymously as well. So, you know, if you don't want to put your name, that is perfectly fine as well. So at the end, we will have a look at those questions and take a range of those questions. If there's lots and lots, I'll also give you the support details at Family Zone so that you can head the questions there as well, but we'll get to as many as we can. So without any further ado, I think I'll hand over to Martine and she'll be able to you'll be able to introduce yourself a little bit better, Martine, but thank you so much for joining us and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen now. Okie doke. Can you see me? All good? Okay, so I'm Martine Oglethorpe and I'm from the Modern Parent and also a cyber safety expert with Family Zone. And my background is a background in education and I have a master's in counselling. And I guess I started looking into the digital world and how that was affecting our young people, because I was seeing a lot of that in my counselling sessions. But also I have 5 children of my own, so I also knew that this was going to be something that was going to play a pretty big role. So I love the digital world as well, but I also know that it has certainly some areas that we need to be aware of and we need to help our young people with. So tonight I'm looking at my focus tonight though is the mental well-being whilst we've been living, learning and working from home, and we do have that bonus tip, which is heading towards a little bit of the heading back to school, the transitioning back to school, because I know that, you know, some states are now starting to make that a bit more of a reality. So we certainly are seeing lots of challenges with that as well. So what we've been talking about, I guess what I've been talking about the last couple of weeks has really been adapting to this new normal, whatever our new normal is. But looking at, you know, the ways that our children have had to face a lot of challenges, and certainly us as adults as well, have had to face a lot of challenges in adjusting to the different way of learning and living and hanging out in our homes and not, you know, venturing out into the big wide world anymore. So it has meant that there's been some big challenges. Now, our brains certainly have the ability to adapt to these challenges, and over time we can certainly adapt and you know, return to some default settings. But it often also depends on how well we are initially. So it's just as if we were physically healthy. You know, when we get a virus or a cough or something, we can handle it better if we're coming from a place of physical health and well-being. And similarly, when with our mental well-being, you know, if we've got a pretty good mental health across the board, then we're going to be able to face those challenges and adapt to those changes a lot better. And we're certainly finding that, particularly at this time. So let's look at what some of those challenges have been for certainly for young people first. Well, they've had to adjust to a whole new range of learning. You know, I know a lot of kids are used to using their iPads and their laptops and all that for school, but it's certainly been very different having to do that from home. And there's been lots of challenges with that. And aside from just handling all of the technology, there's certainly been missing out on a lot of things socially, all of their connections and their mates. They're not hanging out with their mates at school. So that's been a big challenge for young people. They've certainly been missing out on all sorts of milestones, on birthdays and parties, and socials and ceremonies and all those sorts of things. And obviously missing the extracurricular activities, their sport, their training with their mates, competition, all those sorts of things. And then, of course, those long times on the screen. You know, we've got kids on the screen for their work during the day, and then they've still got homework at night, and then their only other avenue of connecting or being entertained is largely happening on a screen as well. So all of this has obviously been a big different challenge for a lot of our young people. So it's certainly something we've also had to deal with as parents. And certainly for parents, there's been some challenges too. We've seen lots of, you know, just logistical challenges. We're trying to run households and we're trying to work from home, and we're trying to help our kids remote learning, and, you know, managing where everybody sits, who's taking up all the bandwidth on the internet. All of these things have been challenges. And then there's trying to work from home, whilst also trying to manage your child and keep them on task and stop them being distracted. And I know that this has been a huge frustration, not just in my own household, but in many of the households around the world at this time. So lots of challenges for parents. There's a lot of overwhelm. It's all new, uncertain. All those sorts of things can make it quite challenging. Managing the technology themselves, worried about all this extra screen time our children are doing, has been a challenge for parents, and wondering how we're going to pare that back, how we're going to wean them off when things go back to normal. There's also been a lot of guilt for parents over that. You know, my kids having to be on the screens all the time. This wasn't something that I always wanted for them. You know, I'm allowing my younger child to talk to their friends online. This wasn't something I was prepared for. So there's all of those sorts of issues as well. And there's a lot of comparison happening. You know, we're comparing to what everybody else is doing online, and, you know, they're all doing amazing things, and we're just managing to, you know, get through the day. So there's certainly been lots of those challenges. And of course, financial stress. You know, lots of people have either lost their jobs, or they're running businesses that have, you know, been severely hurt. And so all of those stresses, you know, come together and cause, you know, a lot of angst for parents as well. And I guess then that leads me to my first wellbeing tip, though, is that as the parents, we do set that emotional tone of the household. So I guess we want to be really careful on the sorts of messages that we're sending to our kids at this time. And that's not to say that we can't show them that, you know, we're upset at times, or we're frustrated, or we're angry and things like that. But I think it's really important that we let them know about the sorts of things that we can control, and the sorts of things that we can't control. And so therefore we want to, you know, really let ourselves and our families know that we can run our own race as well. We don't have to compare to what everybody else is doing. And I've put here shuffling if you have to, because for those that might remember Cliff Young's good old shuffle, you still get to where you need to go. You just might need to do things at your own pace as well. But I think it's really important you look at your individual circumstances and your family's needs at this time, because everybody, despite us all being in the same global pandemic, we are all having very different challenges in our own homes, in very different situations. So really looking at, we've all got different aged children, we've got different jobs, we've got different, things that we have to get done every day. And so we don't want to be comparing, to what Karen on Facebook is managing to achieve every day and all those sorts of things, because it's not necessarily going to be relevant to us. So trying to stay in our own lane and look at what needs to happen in our own households, avoid those comparisons, and also celebrate some of those wins. There will be lots of little wins along the way. And as I said, trying to create that tone of positivity as well, that, there are certainly challenges at this time, but there's also some great things that we're managing to achieve and some great things we're managing to do. And of course, cut yourself a little bit of slack, because, we are all new at this. This is not something any of us were prepared for. And so we need to, understand that we're all trying our best as well. So cut yourself a little bit of slack there. And look at, and this is what I guess I want parents to also try and get across to their kids. Look at the things that we can't control and the things that we can control. And that really helps shift our mindset to something that allows us to take control of our situation and be in charge of how we move forward. So we can't control COVID-19. We can't control the disease. We can't control the weather. Can't control the decisions of the state government or the federal government or our schools or the principal or what other people are doing. So there's a whole lot of things that we can't control. And sometimes we can get caught up in those things, and the frustration and the anger and those sorts of things can take over. But I guess, again, we want to let our kids know that there's a lot of things that we can control about these situations. So we do have to learn to accept a lot of those things, because they are what they are and we have very little say over those things. But we do have control over a lot of other things. So we have control over that mindset of really getting that across to our kids, that we can try and accept this situation. We can work with what we've got and try and make the best of it in whatever way we can. We certainly can control the sorts of things that we do in our day, how we spend our time, whether we're having a healthy lifestyle. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we getting out and exercising, getting fresh air? Are we eating the right foods? All of those sorts of things are within our control. And that's, I guess, what we want to keep getting across to our kids and really set that tone. So my second point here is looking at our online habits. And this is, our habits, our behaviors, the way we're using the screens, all of those things, can really play a massive role in how well and how mentally well we are at this time. And because we are using the screens at probably unprecedented levels, and certainly, we've got younger kids using them more, and we're all using them at the same time in the household. So it can be a bit of a recipe for disaster. So we really want to look at what are some of those habits that we're creating online, and also what's the opportunities there for us to teach our kids now, and how can we use this time to really get more involved in some of their screen time and the sorts of things that they're doing, so that we can help them with all of that. Because, we really also want to be checking our scrolling. There's a lot of content out there at the moment. There's a lot of things that we're exposed to. We're often checking on the news because, we're in a situation that doesn't give us a lot of answers at the moment. We're constantly wanting more certainty. So we keep going back to our social media feeds or our news sites and trying to get some of those answers. And we don't want to also flood our kids with all of the news and all of those sorts of things. Just get a little bit of what you need to know, and then try and move that away from your day, because that constant exposure can be exhausting, and certainly if you've got a child or yourself is an anxious type of person, then that's certainly not going to be healthy. And I've also got there curating your feeds, because at this time, as we are often just scrolling through our feeds and looking at what all of our friends are doing or what other people are doing or what celebrities are doing or whoever it is, it can affect our well-being as well. So it's also looking at, how am I feeling when I've finished scrolling for that half an hour, or 2 hours, however long you scrolled for, and think, did that have a positive impact on me? Did that help me? Did it uplift me, inspire me? Did it support me? Did it nurture me? Or was I sitting there scrolling, getting aggravated or getting frustrated or comparing myself to what everyone else was doing? Or am I feeling excluded, or all those sorts of things? And if that's happening, we need to look at, well, how do I make that feed better and healthier for me? So there might be some people that I need to get rid of at this time, that I might even just need to mute at this time, that are not healthy for me at this time. And I think this is a really good conversation to have with our kids as well, about because we always want to remain in control of the experiences that we have online. And this is one of the things that we can control, is who are we following and who are we allowing into our lives, and who are we allowing to play a part in what we see, and how we're feeling as well. So really looking at what am I experiencing when I scroll through my feeds. And so I just call that mindfully scrolling. So next time, having a scroll through your feed, look at exactly who you're following and what did you get out of that. And there's nothing wrong with looking at what your friends are doing and seeing all those sorts of things, but yeah, really just have a good think about, is this really good for my well-being, and try and have those conversations with your kids as well. Because there is a lot of things that we can control online. We can control, who we follow, the sorts of things we consume, the sorts of videos we watch, all those sorts of things. We can control how much time. This is not always easy. Certainly for our kids, when we've got things like Family Zone that can help us do that, that makes it much easier. But we can also respond to things like, we can also control who we respond to. And these are sorts of things that I do when I work with kids, when we look at having conversations online, or if somebody makes a comment online, when do we respond to that comment, or when do we say, this is not a conversation I need to get involved in, or this is not an argument worth having, or it's certainly not an argument I'm going to win, so it's not something I need to invest my time in. Because when I invest my time in those conversations, it usually has a negative impact on my well-being, because I'm worrying about, what are they going to say next? What are they going to come back with? How am I going to respond next time? And that really can eat away at us emotionally as well as just being a time waster. So again, it's important that we use this time to talk to our kids about what are the sorts of things that we do respond to. How do we respond to people? How can we know when something's best just to leave it or ignore it? So it can be some really good ways that we can actually learn and teach our kids about all those things that we have control over online. The only things that we can't really control, therefore, are what other people do. I can't control what other people do. I can get angry and I can get mad, but at the end of the day, I can't control them. So again, do what I can control, which is whether or not I respond, whether I mute them, whether I hide them from my feed, or whatever it is you need to do. But look at the things that you can control online. And we really can't control our audience. We might be able to put the right settings in, and we make our accounts private and do all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, once we've said something online, we have absolutely no control over what happens to it at the other end, because we literally lose control of an audience the minute something goes online. Because even if it's just a simple text message between two people, once it's online, that other person has it on their device, they can do whatever they want with it, and it's no longer private between the two of you. So again, looking at this is something I can control. I can control what I send out into the world. I can't control what happens to it, but I can always control what it is that I send out. And so all of these things, and having this understanding, will make sure that we're having a better experience while we're online. And with this, I often get asked by families and parents, well, how much time should my child have on a screen? How much time should my 2-year-old have? How much time should my 6-year-old? How much time should my 12-year-old? And, it's almost a redundant question, I guess, now, particularly now. I think the World Health Organization suggests that we have 1 hour for our 2 to 5s, and I think up to 2 hours for kids up to 12. Now, obviously, that's gone completely out the window right now. And even in other times, I think we should always look at some different questions when it comes to looking at screen time. And that is, what are they actually doing on the screens? How relevant is it to them? How helpful is it to them? How positive an experience is it to them? Is it appropriate for them? All of those things. Are they just consuming content, or maybe they're creating something? So there's a difference in the way that they're spending their time. Now that's not to say that you can't sit and watch something on Netflix or watch a YouTube video, but it's what you're actually doing, with that time, and what is the effect then that's having on you? So is what you're watching, is it hurting you? Is it dangerous for your development? Is it violent? Is it scary? Is it pornographic? It's obviously not going to be healthy or good for your well-being. But also, again, is it something that's inspiring you and uplifting you and making you feel good, or is it something that's really depleting you of your energy and your emotional energy? Is it something where you're feeling worse than you did when you came on? Are you comparing yourself? Are you all those sorts of things? So looking at the effect it's having on them, and also if they're playing a game, is that game having a positive experience? Are they able to get off and go along and do something else, or are they having a tantrum and becoming aggressive with you and all those sorts of things? Then it's probably not something that's really good for their well-being. And then the final question to ask in that is, well, what are they missing out on if they're on the screen? So we have a whole lot of needs that we need to be met, and certainly our children do. And we know a lot of those needs. We know they need to be having active time and being exercising and getting fresh air. And we know that they need to connect with other people in real life, although that's hard at this time, but still with family members. They can take the dog for a walk, they can hang out with siblings, they can have time just to chill out. So there's a whole range of experiences that our kids need. They obviously need lots of sleep and good food and all those sorts of things. Now, if they're missing out on those things because of the screens, then it's too much. And so we really want to make sure that we're looking at, what are the things that they are missing out on if they're on the screens too much. And then we can start to get a better look at, well, how much time should my child have on a screen? Well, let's look at that individual child. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see the effects it's having on them. And let's see that they're still getting all of those other needs met and all the other things that they need to do. They're able to fit them into their day. The third one I'm looking at here is maintaining rituals and routines. I think rituals and routines are really crucial at this time particularly. I think they're crucial all of the time, but particularly at this time because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment with our young people. A lot of things that we don't really know the answers to, and their days are different than what they have been, and their future's looking a bit different, and we don't know what's going to happen really. And so having a few rituals or routines that can give our kids that sense of stability, sense of security, and more of an understanding of what's to come, even if it's maintaining that nightly reading of your book before you go to bed, or it might be having a breakfast together in the morning, or it might be now maybe even creating new rituals for this time. For example, in our family, where after we've done a bit of schoolwork in the morning, we take the dog for a walk every day. We go to the park and we kick the football and we come home. Now, that's obviously not something that happens, in school time, but it's become a new ritual and a new routine that we're doing. And it's something the kids know to expect. And it's something that just helps provide that little bit of stability. So we can still keep ones from that we had before, but we're also creating new ones. And I think that's really important. And I guess that's different to having, structure to your day. Structure to your day can be really helpful too. And some families work really well with knowing exactly what's happening, every hour. Some families don't work so well with that. So if you do like to have a routine for your day and a structure laid out, make sure it's fairly flexible because, I don't know about your family, but sometimes things don't always go right in my day. And sometimes the child who I think is going to sit down and do an hour of work is not really going to do an hour of work that day. And so we need to change it up, and we might think, okay, we need to walk the dog now rather than later because you need to get out and run around and get some of that testosterone out of you. So certainly have those structures in your day as well, but make sure they're really flexible. Otherwise, we just end up getting frustrated, and a frustrated parent does not allow for a very pliable child either. So we need to keep check of our own sanity. My fourth wellbeing tip here is to communicate. Really, really important at this time to communicate. Now, most people would say, well, we're communicating all the time because it's just, the 4 of us or the 6 of us, or in my case, the 7 of us under one roof. So of course we're communicating. But I think it's really important that we are letting each other know of our needs as well. Because we're trying to work from home, we're trying to still get, chores done at home. And so really communicating with each other what needs to happen, what you need, and also communicating with your peers or your work colleagues about what's the situation at your home. Sometimes you might not be able to be on that Zoom call for 2 hours if you've got, a husband who also might need to be on a Zoom call at that time. So there's all sorts of things that you might need to be discussing together, but communicating with your kids too about these are different times, and sometimes there might be some rules now that we've let go a little bit. Yes, you might be having a bit more screen time, but when things go back, we might have to change that up again as well. So really making sure we're open with that, because there's also a lot of needs that we all have to have met. We do need to all get physical activity, good food, and make sure we're getting plenty of sleep. Getting time to just even be creative can be really, really helpful for our well-being, because that's also a time when kids can process some of their feelings and some of their anxieties, and it allows just them to have just that chill out time. it is still good to daydream, even if we're thinking about the next holiday that we're going to have. We can't really imagine it, but we can still try and imagine it, because even thinking about good things can, help our well-being, and help others when we can. Get your kids to help out around the house, because that helping others, or taking next door's bins out, all of those sorts of things really can add to a child's self-esteem and their sense of self-worth. And we want to make sure we're doing that, so that they're not, relying on, the screens and their likes and their comments and all of that for their sense of self-worth. This is always, one of the best ways, I think, to really build a sense of purpose for young people. So try and get them helping out where you can. And obviously they're going to want to be connecting with their friends, and that's going to be, play an important part in their well-being as well. My fifth point here is just really reflecting on what you've learnt during this time. I think it's a really good time for us to look at how our lives have changed, how your children's lives have changed, and really look at some of the things that we can take with us going forward, and have these conversations, with your families, and have these conversations with your kids as you're going on to discuss what sorts of things you've learnt. So we might be looking at, new things that we've discovered that, we might not have had we not had this time. There might be new rituals that we've created, and some that we do want to keep. My son did say to me the other day, are we still going to be able to go to the park and kick the ball like we've done every day when school goes back? And it's like, well, maybe not exactly the same way, maybe not at the same time, but we can still incorporate it into our week somehow, or into our day when we can. And so really, it's an interesting discussion to have with your kids about some of the things that they've enjoyed and some of the things that they have missed or haven't enjoyed. So it's looking at, well, what are the new habits that maybe we can keep? And what are the ones that haven't proved so healthy for us, or haven't proved very helpful, that we probably want to try and change? And discuss the learning and growth that also comes from overcoming those obstacles. This has been a challenging time, but our kids have overcome a lot of obstacles as well. So really letting them know that this is all resilience that they've shown at this time as well. So celebrate that resilience, and look at, if we've overcome this, there's going to be challenges again in the future. And we can, we've got, we know that we can overcome them as well. And this is my little bonus tip here, is looking at transitioning back to school, work, or another new normal. It may not be the same normal that we were used to previously, but it's another new normal, because we're still not exactly sure what that is. And that can be, for some, that can be, quite an anxiety ridden time, because some kids have really enjoyed this time at home. Some kids have really thrived learning from home. And so we are seeing that I'm certainly seeing from a lot of my readers and followers that, they've got kids that are maybe not so keen on going back, because they've got quite comfy with this. They've liked learning at their own pace. They've liked not having to get on the bus. They've liked not having to be socially switched on all the time, and spending all that emotional energy, hanging out with mates, or trying to fit in, all those sorts of things. So we certainly want to, listen to our kids' fears and acknowledge those worries. And sometimes just validating those fears is enough. Now, we also don't want to be preempting how we think they're going to be either. We don't want to be constantly saying to them all the time, oh, I bet you're worried about going back, and what are you scared about, all those sorts of things. We still want to remind them that, that there's, they've done this before, and that they will be okay, but we still want to certainly validate those worries and allow them to talk about them if they can. But again, taking it slowly if you can. We don't have to introduce every single extracurricular activity the same week that school goes back, because again, we want to try and slowly transition back to different things, because they will have got into some different patterns and some different routines, and have some different expectations of themselves as well. And also in the role of technology, I think going back to schools, again, discussing how your use of technology has changed over this time. What are some of the things that the technology allowed us to achieve over this time? What are some of the voids that it filled? Yes, it was able to educate us, and it allowed us to be able to work. It allowed us to connect with our friends. It allowed us to be entertained. It did all of those things. But what were some of the things that it couldn't do for us? And I had this conversation with my own son, and he had an app where he would, as a fitness app, and he would talk with his mates, and they would record how many kilometers they'd run and all those sorts of things. And it was a great way for him to stay connected to his mates and still get his physical activity and do all of that. But when I said, well, what have you missed out on? He goes, well, still give me a footy training session next to my mates any day of the week, and I will take that, and I will take that locker room banter and all of those sorts of things. And even though I'm, doing my schoolwork with a computer, and I've got my phone with a private chat hanging, with my mate, give me that mate sitting next to me at school any day, and I'll take that. So I think it's also a really good opportunity for us to have that conversation with our kids about there's some things that the screens just can't do for us, and will never be able to do for us. Well, certainly probably not in my lifetime. So, and that human connection is really important. So hopefully that will allow also our kids to see that, there's certainly a role for the technology, but there's also some things that we might want to make sure that we're maybe changing in the future, and making sure that we're really paying close attention to all of those other needs that we have, and really prioritizing what's important to us going forward. So that's all I had. That was all I had from me. So I hope that just gives you a little bit of I'm going to stop my sharing, a little bit of idea of how we can sort of how we have been managing this time, or how we can continue to manage this time, but how we can continue to manage it going forward. Because, as I say, there's going to be lots of changes that are happening that we're not really sure about, and so who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I think it's a good time for us to all check in on that well-being, and we can always make sure that we're making sure a lot of those needs get met.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right, Martine. I really loved your point about, maybe focusing on some of the positive things that your family has taken out of this experience. I know with my family and my kids, we've done some things that we'd never done before. We've been doing puzzles and, meeting all the neighbours, and, I've really enjoyed that time, and I know my kids have as well. So we won't be rushing back to being as busy as we were before as well. So thank you so much for that, Martine.
Yeah.
As I said at the beginning, there will be some time at the end for some questions. I can see there's a couple come through already, and I'll just do my part, and then we'd be more than happy to stick around and take your questions. So I'm going to share my screen now. You should be able to see my screen now. I thought I might start with just a little bit of background on me. Who am I? So as I said at the beginning, my name is Jess, and I'm from Family Zone. Tonight I'm going to show you how Family Zone can not only keep your kids safe online, but perhaps, help us save our sanity a little bit during this time where, some kids are back at school, some kids are still at home, and we're really still juggling this work and schooling situation. Just making sure that everything's working properly. Sorry, bear with me. So a bit of background on me. As you can see, I'm just making sure my screen is sharing properly. It's not sharing? Can you see my screen okay, Martine?
Yeah, you can see it now. Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. So as you can see, I'm married, and I've got a couple of kids as well. Not as many as Martine. Martine's got 5. I've got 2, Matilda and Harper, and I've got quite a broad background in the criminal justice industry. I was an intelligence analyst for the WA Police for over 10 years. And a lot of that time towards the end was spent in the sex crime division. I was in the little cyber area of the sex crime division. And my kids were still really, really young at that point. But it really, really opened my eyes to, the dangers of online safety. And I was really looking at my kids and thinking, wowee, I need to get myself together to make sure that I don't, open them up to these dangers. And I really want to make sure that, I'm setting them up to be safe online. And it really made me realize the need for prevention. I'm very passionate about prevention, and it made me really passionate about prevention in cyber safety. So I started looking for ways that I could not only help the clients that I was dealing with in the police, but also help my own kids as well. And that's when I came across Family Zone. So I've been with Family Zone since 2017, and I just love it. I love being able to do things like this, helping other families, keep their kids safe online and really help us stay involved in what our children are doing online. So let's move right along and talk more about why we're here. So the slide you're looking at now is really just demonstrating your children's digital journey. So you can see that at age of 4, you know, we're starting to hand over our phones at the cafe while we have a coffee with our girlfriends, and, you know, our kids are accessing internet so young. By the age of 6, they're already getting their own devices. But I read a study the other day, the Raising Children's 2018 study, that it really had this alarming quote that really struck home with me, that 48% of those kids that we're giving their first device to have no privacy set up and no parental controls. So they're getting their first devices at this age of 6 with no protection whatsoever. And then, you know, you can see from here, age 8, they're at risk of seeing adult content so young. It used to be 11, the risk of seeing adult content, and now it's really come down to age 8. And, you know, the e-safety commissioner reported that 38% of parents are worried about our kids seeing inappropriate content. And as you can see from that stat, it's really, really warranted. By age 10, we're giving our kids their first mobile phone. I know my daughter Matilda has one. You know, I want to make sure that I can keep in contact with her, and I really want to make sure she's still safe though. So we're giving them these phones. We want to make sure that they're protected, yeah? By age 12, they're online 4 to 6 hours a day. And, you know, by age 16, they've got devices for school, nearly all of them, yeah? So what you're looking at now is family zone data. So this is anonymous data that we've collected. Now, all these families have family zone in place. This on the left-hand side is the usage patterns of children 9 to 12. And then on the right-hand side, 13 to 15. And this is some of the things that they were accessing in their normal day-to-day. The ones with the red lines are obviously the more problematic things. Now, like I said, all these families had family zone in place, so they weren't able to get to some of these scary places, like children 9 to 12, 19% of them, pornography was blocked, yeah? So this day and age, it's not if your children see inappropriate content, it really is when. They will be exposed to it at some point if you don't have a parental control in place. So that brings me to Family Zone. I thought I might just do a quick background on what it actually is. Some of you might not be fully familiar with it. So Family Zone is a cyber safety tool to keep your kids safe on the internet, no matter what source of internet they're using and what device. Doesn't matter what device they're using. We have an app for all their devices and a box for your home Wi-Fi, and it's all controlled by you, the parents and guardians, by our app. Now, we lean on our relationship with the cyber experts like Martine to advise us on all our settings, meaning, you know, what should my Matilda as a 10-year-old be able to see on the internet versus a 15-year-old? It's going to be very different. So tonight I'm going to go over a few of my favorite features and how I use it at home with my kids. So you can see some of the features on the screen now. We filter the internet. We can help you manage their screen time, manage their gaming, and also provide you with lots of reports and alerts as well. Yeah. So one of my favorite features is how Family Zone can help me manage my kids' screen time. So we do this through our use of routines and calendars, and it's just super handy in my household. You know, with Matilda, I can make sure that she gets her homework done, and by using the routine, she's only got access to educational internet during that period that I want her to get her homework done, yeah? And it means that I don't have to be hovering over her shoulder, making sure she's doing the right thing. I can set her up with her homework, and Family Zone will make sure she stays on track, and then I can go off and do what I need to do, whether it's work or cook dinner or whatnot, yeah? And also by the use of the routines and calendars, Matilda's internet gets turned off at a particular time. For Matilda, it gets turned off at 7 o'clock. She doesn't actually go to bed until 8, but as we know, research shows that kids really need that, hour break from the screen so that it doesn't interrupt their sleep, yeah? And my kids are just so used to this now. Martine touched on, the importance of routines and structures, and Family Zone can really help you put some of that in place. And my kids are so used to it, they don't even notice it anymore. It's just the way it is. The internet gets turned off for Matilda at 7 o'clock. It's just the way it is. But if she does get a little bit cranky, she's blaming Family Zone, not me. Not me at all. But, on the weekends and on the holidays, and even during this period that we're going through at the moment where things are a little bit uncertain, we might want to give them a really quick change and give them a little bit more internet than we normally would. And Family Zone, you can make changes really simply just by your own phone. So we just make it a lot easier for you to stay involved in what your kids are doing online, but be able to make, changes to that structure pretty easily as well. So the other thing that I really love about Family Zone is how it helps you manage social media. So, for me, Matilda's only 10 years old, Harper's only 8. I don't want them having any social media whatsoever. And by having Family Zone in place, I can make sure that that's taken care of, yeah? When I first started at Family Zone, I'd literally just finished up with the police in the cyber area of the sex crime division. And I thought I was, right across all the dangerous apps. I was dealing with that sort of stuff every day. I, really thought that there was nothing that Family Zone could teach me about that sort of thing. But now I know that that was a really super naive attitude to have, because this environment is changing constantly. And it's literally impossible for us parents to keep up with it without assistance from the cyber experts like Martine, and without having something like Family Zone in place. When I put Family Zone on Matilda's iPad, she had 3 dangerous apps on her device that I didn't even know she had. And one of the most constant issues that I saw when I was working at the police is that parents didn't even know what social media platforms their kids were using until it was too late. We need to be more involved with our children's online life, and that means knowing what platforms they're using. So as you can see with Family Zone, it will tell you what apps your children have on their devices, and you'll also be able to get the cyber experts' reviews. So someone like Martine will be able to tell you what she thinks about that app, and then you as parents can decide whether it's suitable for your child or not. You can make the decision to open it up for your kids, or you can decide to block it until they're ready. Yeah. So the last really popular feature of Family Zone is obviously how we filter the internet, yeah? So it's really preventing your children from seeing that inappropriate adult content. Yeah, and that's a massive tick for me. I just don't want my children being exposed to that sort of thing. And as we saw from my slide, children as young as 9 were, inadvertently accessing pornography. Now, I'm not saying for a second that kids that young are purposely seeking it out, but it just goes to show how easily and readily available it is on the internet. The eSafety Commission reports that by the time kids are 16, over half of them have regularly accessed inappropriate content. Yeah. And the other really good thing with this is that you can do it on a time base. So, you might want to give your kids access to their favorite social media platform, but during a time that's appropriate. So during like a play time, not when you want them doing their homework, definitely not when you want them sleeping. Yeah, so it just gives you a little bit more control back and really opens up those lines of communication for your family. Yeah, and I'm certain that your kids will have a lot to say about what they want to have access to, and you guys can negotiate that. This is simply a tool for you to use to make this part of our life just a little bit easier. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about tonight. I just show you the favorite features for you to go and investigate. If you do want to take advantage of Family Zone, we can give you a discount through Martine's page. This is the website for you to go to, and I will cut and paste and put it into the chat area as well. And also you might be interested in getting Martine's book. Lots of her really expert advice that we heard tonight will be part of that book. So this is the website where you can purchase that book as well. So that's about all that I was going to talk about tonight, but I did promise you that we would open it up for some question time. So I'm going to stop sharing and I will cut and paste and put those web addresses in the chat area. I did notice, Martine, that there was a question in there already. I'll just read that while I'm posting the link. So a little while ago. So one question that came through while you were talking, Martine, was should we be living more day to day instead of looking too far ahead at the moment? What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I certainly think we can do a little bit of both, and I think we can, particularly when we've got young children that are slightly anxious, or if we're an anxious person ourselves. I think definitely living in the moment is certainly going to be helpful for us, because we know that most of our anxiety comes from either looking behind at all of the things that we should have done. I should have planned for this better. I should have had a contingency plan for a global pandemic, and I didn't. So I'm anxious about that. Or it comes from looking too far ahead. So we're looking at, how am I going to, pay the mortgage, or are we not going to go on our holiday, or how am I going to pass my VCE, or am I going to get to study my exams, or am I going to get into my university of choice? So when we look too far ahead, that also is when our anxiety happens as well. So, we were always saying that that's why, mindfulness practices and all of those sorts of things have become really popular, because it is backed by science, that when we live right now in today, we usually can see that it's actually not that bad right at this second. And it helps us to have the ability to deal with those things. So I definitely think that this is a good time to help teach us that yes, living in the moment, it can be really helpful for us, because again, so much of what is going to happen in the future is out of our control. So much of what happened in the last few months was completely out of our control. And so again, let's look at what we can control, and what we can control is right now, and what we're doing in our households right today, the sorts of things we're doing. But that's not to say, we can't also, have some of these conversations about how we might want to change some of our habits going forward as well. So, but yeah, absolutely. It is a day-to-day thing. And certainly if this is something that, if you are struggling at the moment, and I think we really need to try and just pare it back and keep it as manageable as you can. And if that means we just, get through an hour of schoolwork with our kids, and that's all we manage that day, then that's going to be okay. It's not going to have major repercussions going forward. Let's just do what we can to maintain our well-being for right now, because if we're getting stressed and anxious and going crazy and frustrated, then that's certainly going to rub off on our kids, and they're not going to be learning anything anyway if they're in that state of mind. So really focusing on, I think our well-being at the moment is really crucial. So really make sure we're focusing on that right now.
Fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree. There can see some other questions coming through as well. Everyone seems to be in the chat area tonight, which is fine. You can post your questions there, or there is the Q&A as well. Before I answer any more questions, I might just stop the recording so that it doesn't go on too long. If you wanted to leave, you're more than welcome to go, or you can hang around for the questions. If you're leaving, thank you so much for having us. And I will email out this recording over the next week. So keep your eye out for that if you want to watch it all over again, or share it with some friends that didn't manage to make it. But if not, hang around for the questions. Thank you very much.